Berlin, Germany. And that's where they had the riots in '53, and it was the start of basically the Berlin Wall, which wasn't built until, basically '61, but they had bombed wire around the perimeter of the Soviet sector. The city was basically divided into 4 areas: the American, British, French, and Russian. And each sector was controlled by that government. And it was interesting because things were very fluid at the time. After the war, the Second World War, the country was really devastated. And they had the Berlin airlift, if you remember. That started in basically 47, 48. And the American Air Force literally supplied the city of Berlin, which has a population, had then a population of millions, with coal, food, medical supplies, and a whole bit. And I was fortunate enough to be stationed right across the street from the airfield.
There you go. And what branch of service were you in?
The Army.
The Army. And what was your rank or highest rank?
The highest rank I achieved was corporal.
Okay.
I had the opportunity when I was there. I was only there about 6 months, and they asked me if I'd want to become a squad leader, which would have carried the rank a sergeant. But I had something going, which I was going to become mail clerk, and that's a fairly comfortable job, and you avoided a lot of the field duty.
Yes, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And what dates did you serve?
Well, I arrived in Berlin early April of '53, and I exited the city in September of '54. So it was roughly about 17 months, 18 months over there.
Okay. Were you drafted or enlisted?
Drafted.
Okay. And when you got the news, where were you living at the time?
In Hartford.
Were you happy, or did you have any reservations?
Oh, no, not really. I was fortunate enough. There was a whole group of us from Hartford who I had gone to school with, high school, Weaver High, and we all were drafted in the same date. And it was really, it was a fairly comfortable experience, short of leaving my girlfriend, who's now my wife. And we went through boot camp and all. There was a whole group of us, and we were really close.
Was this while you were still in high school, or had you graduated already?
I had graduated.
Already. Did you pick the service that you eventually became, or did they just put you in?
They picked me.
They picked you, okay.
Along with millions of others.
Yeah. Do you recall, like, the first days in the service?
Yes, in fact, we left Hartford and on the 6th of October at 6 a.m., went to New Haven, and we were loaded onto buses and sent up to Fort Devens in Massachusetts. We stayed there for about 10 days, and we got the haircuts, the uniform, took the IQ tests and all. And then from there, sent up to New Jersey to Fort Dix, where we went through basic, and then 8 weeks of basic, and then 8 more weeks of advanced infantry training. And basically, what it was, the Korean War was going on pretty hot then, and they were loaded on ships from basic to Korea and used as replacement troops.
How old were you when you first were
20.
20. And
20.
How was the experience? Do you recall were you happy, nervous? Was it all exciting?
Well, I think it was a combination of everything. It was comfortable from the extent of there were a lot of guys that I knew and grew up with, nervous, not really having much discipline in life, and going from nothing to a tremendous amount of it, and a concern certainly at the end, because guys were being sent to Korea, and what happened in our 13th week of basic, a warrant officer came out and read off our names, 13 of us, who were eligible to attend the DLI. It's the Defense Language Institute, to learn Canton Chinese. And the reason was Canton Chinese is because they were the Chinese troops fighting in Korea, and they needed interpreters. So
did you go into that, or?
right, there were 13 of us eligible. So they already told us we were going to Korea. We figured that it would be spending some time in sunny California.
Yes. Is that where the institute was located?
Yes, in Monterey, California. And it's absolutely glorious. One of our sons, who was in the service in the early 80s, went there and learned the Arabic languages. He spent, oh gosh, over a year there. And if you ever have the opportunity, go there. I just as he.
What's so wonderful about it, if you had to describe it?
Looking at, from the school itself, you look down on the complete Bay of Monterey, and Amy, it's close to heaven.
It's a pretty good place to get sent to.
Oh, gee, I'll tell you, absolutely fantastic. Really, really neat.
Very good. Can you tell me a little bit about boot camp? Like, I know you were describing, but like exactly what you guys did.
Well, it was, I think the usual, what they do is to really rip away the identity that you had, and basically to take orders, to have some discipline in your life.
Was it hard to adjust to, or?
No, I'll tell you, I was in terrific shape at the time, really. I was very active in sports and all, so when I went in there, guys were losing 20, 30, 40 pounds. I didn't vary an ounce. I was just lean as can be.
Well, that's good.
About 100 pounds lighter than I am now.
Well, a little while ago. So, do you remember any of your instructors or any of the people, your superiors?
Yes, I do. And in fact, there was one instructor that I had in basic, a Sergeant Abernathy, who, when I went to Berlin, was my platoon sergeant. And a real good soldier.
Did you get along with him?
Oh yes, yeah.
And had he been in the service for a while? Do you remember?
He was a career man.
Okay. And if you had to say like one or two things that got you through basic training, could you classify one or two things that got you through the day?
No, really.
No.
And I
Was it easy for you?
I didn't find it a struggle.
Okay.
I was in excellent physical condition, so I really didn't find it that bad.
Okay.
And I had a lot of friends, a lot of support there.
Very good. Now, you said it was Korean, started the Cold War. Where exactly did you go?
Oh, gee, well, I was right in the center of Berlin,
Okay.
across from Tempelhof Air Base, and basically the accommodations there were top draw, really, Amy. They were used by the former Luftwaffe pilots, and it was a compound with a number of beautiful brick buildings, and we had individual rooms with hardwood floors, running water, sinks and all. And where they had just one pilot in each room, we had two guys. But it was, I'll tell you, the living accommodation for the Army at that time, that was really exquisite.
Do you remember arriving in Berlin?
Yes, I sure do. And I'll tell you, we arrived there early in April and got off the truck, and they told us to go into the building. We did, and the first individual I seen was a fellow I had gone to high school with, Freddie DeFazio. And we had our greeting and all, and he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What am I doing?" I really didn't have much choice. But Freddie was very instrumental in getting me the good job, the job as the mail clerk.
And was Freddie in the Army as well?
He was in the Army. He was a supply sergeant for the George Company. And he's basically the one who directed me to go for the mail clerk job.
And was that the first time you had been overseas?
Yes, yes.
And how was that experience?
Oh, gee, well, I can remember that today. And we've been to Europe about 12, 14 times since as tourists. But to see the orange tiled roofs coming into Bremerhaven, and the buildings, everything, you see very little wood over there, wood buildings. Most of it is stone, brick, concrete, stucco, and it was really, it's etched in my mind at the beauty or the difference from what it is here in this country.
What was your first job?
First job, I was in the heavy weapons platoon, the 4th Squad, and I was the assistant machine gunner. And where they say a light machine gun, it was 30 pounds, and it got heavier with every step you took and every hill you climbed. One of the real advantages of being stationed in Berlin was that it was more or less garrison army duty, where you were in the center of the city, and you were surrounded by an area which was contained. So there wasn't a lot of sleeping out in the woods at night,
Which had a lot of amenities.
That's right.
Very good. Did you see any combat at all?
No. This was in the 53 and 54, basically in Germany. So,
which was a good thing you didn't see combat. Were there any casualties in your unit or any of your units that you can recall?
No, not really.
That's good.
It was again a very garrison type duty. There was a lot of marching. Every Saturday there was a big parade, a lot of public display for the German people, basically just displaying the Army.
And that's what the parades were for?
That's right, yeah, on Saturday mornings. And being mail clerk, I was exempt from a lot of this because of my duties.
And how was being mail clerk?
Oh, gee, that went off great. I took over the mail room in basically June of '53, and just made a few nice changes. In fact, because of the mail room and the job that I did there, I was voted Soldier of the Year in '54. I set a record for mail room operations for Europe, and for that received a letter of commendation, which is in my permanent file, and was offered a spot at officers' school.
And what were some of those few changes you did?
Well, the Army or any service or any organization can get so rigid because it's so big. And I just changed the hours of operation to make it more convenient for guys to pick up their mail, for getting packages, for reporting what was going on, reporting arrivals and departures, and it blew my mind, things that so easy made such a big difference.
And was your office like right down in Berlin, or did it also do the surrounding areas?
It was right in Berlin, in the regiment that I was in, the 2nd Battalion. Gee, the whole thing, really, it was extremely easy for me, and yet it made a big difference.
Let's see. Okay, so with the mail, how did you stay in touch with your family?
Oh, gee, well, I was engaged to Jamie at the time, and I wrote, well, gosh, we wrote every day. And also, being in the mailroom, I enjoy writing, and I used to write letters for a lot of the guys who were in there who couldn't read and write. Back in, at that time, there was many, well, basically from up northern Maine and in the south, where agriculture at the time was very common. There were guys there who were 26, 28 who couldn't read and write. And I used to write letters home for them and read the letters that were sent to them.
And how did you first begin that? Did you offer that to somebody that you saw couldn't write, or did they ask you?
Yes, when I first was there in the line platoon, basically as the machine gunner, where there were actually guys here who couldn't do it, and I just took it as a matter of course to help them, and then expanded it when I went down into the mailroom.
Now you said your accommodations were really good. What was the food like?
Terrific.
Sure.
We had a chef who was at the Waldorf Astoria, and he and his wife had a dispute. So to get away from her, he went into the Army, and the guy was magnificent. I mean, the troops would go out to Grunwald. It's a lake area, Lake Wannsee, and they'd do night problems, and when they came back in at 2 or 3 in the morning, he would have pastries out there for them. I'll tell you, it was really, the food was no kick whatsoever. I guess the only day you had a problem was Mondays, where every other Monday they had sea rations. So you received your meal in a can. Well, that day we just skipped lunch and we'd go out to eat.
Mm-hmm. And do you recall the chef's name? Yeah.
Franklin. Sergeant Franklin. I'll tell you, he was magnificent. That guy, I think, walked on water.
Very good. Did you guys have plenty of supplies and any resources, anything that you would need?
Well, again, I'll tell you, being garrison and not doing as much field work as they did down in the American zone of Germany, where they used to go out for like 2 months at a time.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go out once a year. We'd go down to southern Germany, close to the Czechoslovakian border, and we'd do a training for a month.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, it was pretty much in the billets, in the buildings themselves, and really garrison. It was the parades every Saturday. You could bank on that, you know.
Yeah.
And it would be marching during the week for the guys. It was pretty much a work day of 8 to 4.
Mm-hmm. And was that 5 days a week?
Yes, in Saturday
the
morning,
parade.
the parade.
And did you guys have any other duties besides working in the mailroom? Did you have to do anything else?
No, we were exempt, and that's why the job was really so good. It gave a lot of time to do things and to become involved, like the writing of letters and things like that.
Now you said your friend Freddie got you the job?
Freddie DeFazio.
Yes. How exactly did he get you the job? Did he talk to somebody? Or?
Well, yeah, he talked to someone, but he more or less, he directed it. He told me what the good jobs were in the company. And the time that I went there, it was really a period of transition. A lot of the fellows who came in a year and a half before were going back home. So we were replacement troops. And it was really determining, you know, what was the best job to go for.
And did you have to apply for it, or did you just put your name on a list?
Well, it was getting to know the fellow, Arnold Wallace was his name, was the mail clerk when I first went there, and I got to know him, and basically the fellow who was in the job made the selection for the new. So
you got a recommendation.
Right. Freddie knew him, and I got to know Wallace, and everything gelled.
Now, when you were living, not only working, but also when you were living, did you ever feel any like pressure or stress, or did you ever feel like endangered, or?
No, not really. If anything ever happened, it'd be all over anyway. I mean, there were hundreds of thousands of Russian troops there, and and we were so far from everything. I mean, there wouldn't even be an opportunity, really. But we used to go over into the Soviet sector. There were tours to be taken down Stalin Alley and Lenin Alley, and it was interesting to see. Now, this was basically 7 years after the war, and you could look being on the other the Linden and look out in back of it, and there was complete destruction. There wasn't a building standing as far as you could see. There was very little improvement in the East Berlin and East Germany, and it was a very difficult life for the people.
Did they ever come over, or try to come over and ask for your help, or do you know what I mean?
A lot of the German people did. We had Moody and Papa. They were two older German people, and they used to do all the tailor and the pressing of uniforms for us. And we used to pay, I think it was like $2 a month for that service, and everyone kicked in. And I used to give them coffee and tea and cigarettes, soap, Kleenex, tissue. I mean, things that they couldn't get. I mean, it was really too expensive for the average German to have. So, and they took care of me. Moody cried when I left there. She was a sweetheart, just an older lady who really appreciated the help that you could give them. And again, they took care of me like a son. I mean, all my shirts and everything was pressed. And they took wonderful care of me.
Very good. Did you have anything special for like good luck or a memento that you carried with you?
No, I'll tell you. Oh, yeah, I take that back. My wife's picture.
That's good. How did you guys entertain yourselves when you weren't working or marching?
Well, gee, we had a theater right on the post, and that in the PX. And God, we used to go to the theater, and the theater was 15 cents. Of course, we're only getting paid about $90 a month anyway, so we had the theater, and we had a snack bar in which you could go there and we used to go and get a milkshake and a toasted cheese sandwich in a show for 40 cents.
Now it's like $40.
Yeah, you couldn't go wrong for that.
What did you have leave at all?
Have what?
Leave?
Oh, no, I didn't take any leave. Well, yes, I did. I went down to Garamish and Berchtesgaden basically twice, once to each resort. And the Army had a facility down there, and they didn't even take leave time. It was called R&R, where they sent you down there for a week. And well, the hotel room everything was 15 cents. A hotel room, each meal was 15 cents. So I mean, it was geared just to get away out of the city. Again, it would be like being stationed in Hartford, and you were pretty much confined to the confines of Hartford. And you know, now there were a lot of guys, they wouldn't even take advantage of it. That's why I got it twice.
Oh, that's good. Sorry. Yeah, where did you travel? Like, you said you went on R&R. Did you go anywhere else, like, in the city that you, like, went often?
Well, like I say, we travel into the Soviet sector to see that. And there were various parks. You have the Brandenburg Gate, which is a big monument, and that was on the border of the Russian and American zone. The Tiergarten, which was a monument to the Soviet troops, and that was in the center of East Berlin, and Lenin Alley and Stalin Alley, and they were the two main avenues in the East sector.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really a monument to communism in the Soviet system. But other than those spots, it was really desolate.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you went to these places and went on R&R, how did you get around? How was your transportation?
Well, basically, it was a train when we went to Garmisch and Berchtesgaden.
Mm-hmm.
And once there, they had bus service that you just...
Did you take the bus to get around the city, or did you walk, or...?
Well, it was a combination of walking and the bus
Mm-hmm.
in tours. And there again, going back at that time, transportation isn't what we know today.
Mm-hmm.
There was, in Berlin, very few people had cars because gasoline was extremely expensive and scarce then. And the people had very little. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there just wasn't the excess monies to spend on things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And public transportation, even back then, was much more developed in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we took a trip back to Berlin '87.
Mm.
And our son was the train commander from the American zone in Germany into Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
So he arranged, and we had a sleeper and the whole bit, because you have to make the trip during the night. They didn't want you seeing what was going through the Soviet sector. And what had changed in the city? There was a dramatic change, but there again, it was over a period of, 34 years.
Mm-hmm. Do you recall any humorous or funny events or unusual events during your time?
Gee, I'm going to tell you, I had a fairly good time there. I mean, I wasn't either a down or a sad person. I enjoyed myself, short of being away from my wife.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as there were a lot of little things that were funny, but unless you were there
Right.
within the, I really couldn't pick any. I went to shows. In fact, I was looking through the album here. I picked out "Holiday on Ice" with Sonia Heine. Now, you probably wouldn't even know who Sonia Heine was. She was basically a famous skater,
Mm-hmm.
a Finnish, I believe. And I was very active over there. I really took part in meeting people and
Getting to know people. And did she come? Did you see her while you were?
yes, at the Sports Palace. That was the program
Mm-hmm.
that we had seen there.
Very nice. I see you got signatures. Very nice.
But it was in pulling this stuff out, looking through, the fellas that the things that you did,
Mm-hmm.
and you just laughed. This past October, we took a trip down to Texas, and I wanted to stop and see in Dallas another mail clerk that we kept in touch over the years. And we pulled into Dallas, so it was after 10 at night, so I didn't really want to bother him. But when we came home, wrote a letter and got a letter back from his wife. Kurt had died last February. But there again, people our age, that's happening to them more and more, and it's coming closer and closer.
Well, that's why this project is very, very vital, so we can get your wonderful stories and experiences. You said a lot of things you had to be in the moment to be funny, but were there any like pranks that you either pulled on your friends or your superiors?
Oh, I used to have a ball with this, because a lot of the fellas would go out and they'd drink a little more than they should have, and coming through, and we'd short sheet the beds, and you'd take your sheet and you'd fold it over so that when you pulled it down to get in the bed, it was only half a sheet, and it'd be a hoot, really, to look at them when they were half smashed trying to get into their bed and couldn't figure out what was going on.
Did you guys do that back and forth, like, or was it like an ongoing thing, or just?
Well, you could pull it to the point where it wasn't funny anymore. But there was this fellow, Sergeant Martin. He was a real different type person. And every so often he'd go out and get smashed, and he'd come in next morning and be completely gone. And we used to print signs and put it, and then take pictures of him in the sign when he couldn't even get out of the bed. He'd be so rocked.
That's funny. Now you have photographs, which will be very helpful. Who are some of the people in the photographs? Just to give a little summary.
Fellows that I served with, basically right through, from a lot of them I grew up with. I say fellows from Hartford that I knew since I was in probably the 10 years old, 5th grade. So it was. There's a lot of history there.
Yes, definitely. Let's see. What did you think of your? You said that a lot of your fellow officers were your friends. Would you say overall you got along with everybody as well as your superiors?
Yes, I'll tell you, Abe, I had or acquired a real appreciation, number one, for the Army or any military service. There's so many jokes that are made about the military and this and that. I don't know any other group that can serve the number of people it serves and make sure they're clothed, housed, fed, have transportation. I mean, it's really an amazing organization, and really very, very efficient. You figure there's planes ships at sea, planes in the air, troops on the ground, and they're all being taken care of. Tremendous undertaking.
Did you keep a personal diary or
no?
Nothing?
No.
Let's see. Do you recall the day your service ended? Your last day?
Not really. I remember the day we returned from Europe, and we hustled home and hurried to get back. And Jamie and I weren't married at the time; we were engaged. But I remember running down the street to see her.
Yeah. Did you come back because it was your time up, or
yes?
Did they ask you to go back or re-enlist, or I'm not sure the
exact
term.
When I was awarded the Soldier of the Year in '54 for the 2nd Battalion, Colonel Sorhan called me up to his office, and he spoke with me about going to officer school and making a career in the military, and he really couldn't understand why I was going home and getting married and really getting out. That was the closest to anyone saying, you know, re-up. And at that time, too, the Army was downsizing because the Korean conflict was over, and there was a contraction of troops. And this is strange. We have 4 sons. The 3rd and 4th sons were both career military. Gary, the 3rd oldest son, is a retired lieutenant colonel, and Brad was a senior master sergeant, which is basically the equivalent of a warrant officer. And he was in the Air Force, but they both retired 3 years ago.
Very good. When you did come home, did you come back to Hartford?
Yes, came back from Hartford,
And is that where your current teen was living?
Yes,
Yeah,
yep.
okay.
And my mother and father were back here, and I had a brother who was in the Navy and had been discharged. He was a submariner. He was living in Hartford, he and his wife and family.
What were the days after you came home, you know, right after you came home, what were they like?
Well, gee, I'll tell you, I remember back then, '54, I was discharged on the 20th of September. We had reserved the church and all, and we had the wedding date of 16th of October. So there was a lot to do in a very short period of time.
Yes.
It was hectic. I was starting back to work, and gee, at this point too, I didn't appreciate my time in the service up to this point, or where I thought about it, but the benefits of serving in the Army started coming. I kept my life insurance. We bought a home with the GI Bill. I went back to school and received my degree, and basically through the GI Bill, because at the time I really couldn't afford to go back to college.
What college did you go to?
A University of Hartford.
And what did you major in?
In business.
And you said you went back to work and then went back to school. Did you do work and school at the same time? Or?
Work and school at the same time.
And where did you work?
It was a printing company, a leper printing, and I learned the printing trade. Then I went to work for a Connecticut General Life Insurance Company as a printer, and with going to college evenings and my background in the printing trade, it was really an entree into buying all the printed material for Connecticut General. And that's eventually what I was doing for them.
And how long did it take to, because you were going at nights, to finish at the University of Hartford?
I did it in a little over 5 years. and that was carrying a pretty good load too. It basically normally would take 8 years.
Okay. When you said you worked at Connecticut General Life, did you stay there for, how long did you work there?
I went to work for CG in '56 and retired in '88. I'll tell you, wonderful company, great career. I enjoyed it immensely, really, and a lot of smart moves for a dumb kid from the north end of Hartford.
Did your time in the service or in the mailroom help with your future career at all?
Well, I think it did from the perspective of it gave me direction. I think again that people I grew up without really appreciating the education that I received in both elementary and high school, and really didn't appreciate myself and the abilities that I acquired until I went in the service and you were able to judge yourself with the others around you. And really, I came out, I think, a different person.
Now, as you said, you've had a lot of friends going into the service with you. Did you make any close friends that you hadn't known while you were in the service?
Oh, yes. And in fact, like I was saying, Kirk Shaw down in Dallas, now, God, this is 56 years later. We're still communicating before and Kirk passed on. And it wasn't on a daily basis or anything, but it was, we knew of each other and what we were doing.
Very good. Do you belong to any veteran organization?
No.
No.
Pardon me. I really have a philosophy about that. If we had 5 children, and if I belonged to any groups, in fact, I did. I belonged to a couple, and they said, "Ed, why don't you come down? Why don't you become involved?" Well, the reason why is because I had a wife and 5 children. If I was down there drinking beer and talking war stories, the kids wouldn't be doing what they should have been doing.
Correct. Have you gone to any reunions or any?
No,
events?
No reunion groups at all, Amy. I think the area that I was so fluid, and people were coming and going so frequently. You didn't have the time to build up, say, a group attachment. Like in the Navy, they could have a ship, and that particular ship could have a reunion where you'd go to.
Okay, let's see. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war and the military in general?
Well, yes, like I said, I really admire the military for what they do. And we also had a West Point graduate, a Lieutenant Mullins. And this man was so classic, really. He was intelligent, well-spoken. He knew how to deal with people. He wasn't crude or rude. He was a real gentleman. and very, very impressed. And we've been up to West Point, and it's such a pleasure to see young ladies and gentlemen who are really ladies and gentlemen, plus intelligent people, in serving our government and our world, our nation.
Okay. Just a couple questions just to clarify. Also, you said Jane. Did you meet her in high school and you got engaged, or how did that?
Yes. Well, my best friend was going out with Janie, and I don't know, and I never asked her or him why, but they weren't going out, so I called her up. And in fact, one of the fellows, Eddie Clemens, who I went into the Army with, we used to hang around before we went in the service, the first date we went on was in November of '51, and we went to the Ice Capades in Springfield, and Eddie met a girl, Brenda Gunning, and Janie and I married, and Brenda and Eddie married, and in fact we still see each other. We're going out to lunch next week.
That's
so
very good. And how was it, because you were away for a while in the service, how was it? Did it strengthen your relationship? Did it renew it?
Well, Janie and I say we were going out, basically it was, a year before, and we just, I guess, knew, you know, she's really a special gal. She's the nicest person I ever met, and you met her this morning. I'll tell you, she could talk a dog off a meat truck, an angry dog, you know, and she just really has a gift of, she's a real people person.
And you communicating with the letters daily most likely helped as well. So.
Yeah, I don't think either one of us missed 10 days in a year and a half of not writing.
And how long did it take to get back to the States, or vice versa, the letter?
Oh, gee, it was only 4 or 5 days, and the mail service was fairly good.
Yes, better than now. Also, just you mentioned the 4 divisions of the sectors.
The city.
The city. What sector were you in again? What
in the American Zone.
American Zone. Okay.
Right, and they were basically the 4 Allied powers of the Second World War, and
I just want to make sure that's clear so anybody knows. Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't cover, or just would like to elaborate?
Jen, I don't know. It was a great experience, and basically the time of going in, I think it broadened me. And at the time, I'm not trying to say I liked it. I didn't want to leave Janie, but it benefited me so much. It gave me a home, an education.
So if I would assume if you had to do it all over again, except for the leaving Janie part, you would do it again?
No, I think it's something, it's like growing. It has to be forced on you, you know? But it was so beneficial in the ending. I really, it made me, I think, a better person all the way around. And I thank Uncle Sam for it. It's nothing that I wanted. But I gave him my best.
Well, I'd like to thank you for the interview, and the Veterans History Project is very, thank you for your experience and your story and sharing it with us.
Oh, gee, thank you, Amy. Happy to be able to do that.
Very good.